Hello and welcome to Dave's Delightful Dishes. As always, I'm Dave, and it is such a delight to be here and having you visiting me today in my kitchen. And today I've got something a little bit different. Not only have I been challenged, but they actually sent me the recipe. Let's check it out. Okay, so my friend Smoke down in Florida he watches my show and he said, hey, I've got a family cheesecake recipe that you should try. And I said, yes, I certainly will try it, but I have never made cheesecake. Never once, not in my life. So this is going to be a challenge because family recipes tend to be short on instructions because they assume, being a family recipe, that you know how to do it. So I'm going to take this recipe, and I'll put it up here. And I'm going to see if I can successfully make Smoke's mother's cheesecake. So we're going to start off with some ingredients. And it's really kind of straightforward. Obviously, this recipe is up, and there will also be in the description below. Let's get started, though. So we need to start off with our crust, which in this case is Nilla wafers. Now, it was very specific of about 65 Nilla wafers or a box of minis. Now, I did not see any mini Nillas, although I do know what they look like. And they want you to crunch them up real good. Crushed. Now, you can do that in a food processor, but you know what's kind of fun if you want to let a little frustration out. You can mash them up real good with a hammer. So I'm going to beat the devil out of these things, and we'll be right back to mix all this stuff together. Okay, well, frustrations successfully taken out. I now have Nilla wafer crumbs, and if there's a couple bigger ones, you can just kind of crunch them up a little bit more with your fingers. And we're going to be mixing, so we have an opportunity to break them down a little bit more at that point. I need a mixing bowl, and I need to put these crumbs inside. Looks like I got a little bit of aluminum dust off of my masher. No big deal. And then I need to take a half a stick of butter, melted, which is going to pour in, and a 1/4 cup of sugar, which is going to go in. And we got to mix this together really well. So we're trying to get enough of it hydrated by the butter. At least I hope so. Let me make sure I get all that butter in there. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nilla wafers, but I am. And man, this does smell pretty darn good. I do like making key lime pies, and I usually use a graham cracker crust, but I might try it with with this crust sometime. We'll see how it all turns out. All right, so now that this has moistened up, and you can see it's starting to get to where I'm sure when I push it, it'll turn into a more solid mass, we need to take a springform pan. And I didn't own one of these, and I now do, and it came with these pre-cut pieces of parchment paper, which I've been told are really, really handy to put on the bottom of these spring forms to make life a lot easier on the back end. So I now need to put all of this into that spring form pan. And then I'm going to spread it around. I'll probably end up using my hands here because it's just going to make life easier. We're spreading it around, and we're going to push and push and push until we make like an even crust. And remember, wash your hands so you can touch your food. Okay. So now, and remember, you can always vacuum your floor later too. I now have a crust set up. There's a couple little extra big pieces, but you know what? I think that's going to end up in the rest of the mix, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So now that that's done, we can put this aside and let's start working on the fillings. Okay, so now for the filling part of the cheesecake, which we start off with 3 blocks of cream cheese. In they go. And a cup of sugar. And it says to mix this well. And I'm going to just kind of beat it up, and we're going to go into fast speed while I do this. And now that I've got that kind of combined a little bit, we're going to go over to my egg beater, and we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. So we're going to do a little bit of a, just a little bit of a montage. And now I have to add a cup of sour cream and a tablespoon of vanilla extract. And nature decided my light wanted to go off there for a second. So we're going to beat this until it's smooth. And now that's pretty well combined, we're supposed to add 3 eggs, one at a time. Now, normally this is where I do my blue egg joke, but for baking, I've only got 1 hen that lays large eggs, so I'm going to use just those. But you want to use large or jumbo eggs. And you can see just how smooth this is getting already. Oh, eggshell. You can tell you're really cooking when things like that happen. Okay, 1 more egg. All right, we can see how smooth that is. So let's take it back to the cake pan and get things going. Okay, so we have spring pan that has our crust in it. And now we're going to pour in our mix. Which is quite smooth. Hardest part's always getting the edges out. Use your rubber spatula and get as much of that wonderful golden wonderfulness out as you can. Now, for the most part, this stuff must be self-leveling. All right, there we go. But I want to just kind of give it just a little jiggle to let it flatten out a little bit. And Now I have preheated an oven to 300 degrees, and this is going to go in for 50 to 55 minutes. So we're going to do 50, and then we'll see what it looks like. Okay, this is 50 minutes. And as you can see, the center is still a little bit sunken. So it's going to need a little bit longer. So I'm going to give it another 5 minutes, and I'm going to check it, and then another 5 minutes, and I'll check it again as needed until it is cooked all the way through. Okay. Well, I've checked this thing a couple of times, and I use a like a bamboo stick, like a skewer, put it in just to see that it's coming out at least mostly clean, if not completely clean. And it took a while because of the middle, but I've got it as good as I can get it now. So we're gonna take it out barehanded. Oh, and oh my goodness, she's delicate. So now this, let me get this oven closed so I'm not cooking my backside here. This has to cool to room temperature, just like this. Don't touch it, don't do anything. We'll be back once it's cool. Okay, so this is cooled to room temperature, and it has done something which, for this being my first time ever with cheesecake, it was puffed up like a souffle, and it then collapsed in on itself. But then what came out of it is what I basically expect to see in a cheesecake. Now, because of the carryover heat, I probably could have gone 5 minutes less, so it is a little bit more brown on the edges than I imagine it would be, but this is my first time trying it, and with that information, next time, I can go a little bit less. But I wanted to make sure that the center was cooked through. Now, as you can see, looks pretty good, but it did collapse into like down in, and so there's almost like a crust with a lip. What seems to be good about that for what we're doing is we're putting a sauce on that, so that'll hold that sauce. I think it was probably intentional, but if not, man, this sure is a nice extra benefit. So I've got to, well, first off, this springform, I've never used a springform before. This springform said that you don't need to spray it or grease it to be able to use it, and it said that you shouldn't do that. However, I'm looking at it, and there's a couple little spots where it's stuck. So rather than ripping my cake apart, I'm gonna use this knife and just go around the edges real quick here. Just kind of make sure that I'm gonna be good. And actually, only 2 spots. It wasn't bad at all. So, good job for the springform. And oh, look at that! All right, this is pretty cool. I like this. Now, the next step here is we need to take this and put it into a cake box, because this is going to go and cool overnight in the refrigerator. So this is boxed up. It's going in the ice box, well, to the refrigerator, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Hello and welcome back to day 2. This has had a chance to chill overnight. It's firmed up really well. Of course, it created a crevice in the middle, but no big deal. It's about to get covered with sauce. So before we get into the sauce, this is a nice time to talk about, hey, for any of you new people, why don't you go check out that like and subscribe button that you see right below the video. Give it a shot, and that way you can see all of my stuff if you enjoyed this one. Anyhow, let's. This recipe calls for a caramel sauce. So we have 20, or caramel, depending on where you're from, 20 of these candies that I've unwrapped, and 3 tablespoons of milk, and we're going to head over to the cooktop. Now, I happen to have had my double boiler out for something else, so I'm just going to use it, because I have a tendency to burn sugar when I try to cook it on a stovetop, but yeah, I don't think you need that. You could certainly just use a saucepan on the stove and just do a lot of stirring, make sure you don't overcook it. So let's head on over to the cooktop, and we'll see how this comes together. All right, the saucepan is hot, and I'm going to start dropping in some candies. And I'm putting in the 3 tablespoons of milk. I'm going to turn the heat up. And then this is not the most exciting of processes. We're just going to have to let this and keep it moving as things start melting. Just keep an eye on this. And as it starts melting down, we're going to stir it together into a sauce. As you can see, it's almost completely melted. So I'm just going to give this a little bit more stirring until those last little chunks go away. And then we are going to go ahead and pour this onto the cheesecake. But you can see that is real thick, and that's what we're looking for. At least I think that's what we're looking for. The instructions aren't really clear, but based on the ingredients that we had, this is what it looks like. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable. And this looks like something you'd use to top a cheesecake. Okay, now that our caramel sauce is nice and smooth, let's see if I can do this without blocking the camera. We're going to pour it onto the cake. And this well that was created sure is handy in this situation. So now I want to get it to spread out and around. There we go. So now I'm going to take this, and I'm pretty sure you could serve it just like this. But I talked with my wife, and she said she thinks it'll be better if I refrigerate this and let that stiffen up a little bit before I cut and serve. So we're going to put this back in the refrigerator till it has cooled, and we'll get back to you for final plating. Okay, so this is out of the refrigerator. It has cooled. The caramel has set on the top, and as you can see, that doesn't look that bad, especially for my first time ever making a cheesecake. Now, Smoke, and for those of you who don't know, he's actually an actual chef. So even though this is a family recipe, he is a professional chef. So please don't laugh too hard at my efforts. This is my first time. And I'm intentionally going and saying, hey, I want to try to figure this out myself rather than asking around, which probably would have made this easier. But I think it's kind of fun. You know, this is what someone who's trying a new recipe for the first time would do. So let's give it a slice. In for the one. In for the two. Now I got to slide under. I was too chicken to take the bottom off. Oh yeah. Look at that. I was too chicken to take the bottom of the springform pan off at this juncture. But you can easily, if you got a better plate than the one that I used, it could just sit there just like that, and I cut right off of that. Now, as you can see, looks pretty nice, but I still can't eat cheese personally, so I know a certain wife that's going to be real interested in it. Let me go get a professional opinion. Results are in, and it's delightful. So, thank you very much, Smoke, for sending this recipe to me, or suggesting that I do this recipe. And I hope the rest of you, if you haven't ever made a cheesecake before, this might make you feel brave enough to try it yourself. As I said earlier, if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe, and you can contact me on my Facebook page, which I'll have linked in the description below, for Dave's Delightful Dishes, as well as my Instagram, where you'll see pictures of things that maybe didn't make it to the show yet. You can let me know whether you want me to show them or not. And always come in with your challenges, and check out my Spreadshirt app, where you can find cool aprons just like this one. But until then, I'll see you at the next recipe.